Hey there, emerging expat. You're tuned in to Let's Move to Portugal. I'm Victoria from Expats Everywhere's podcast, and I have the distinct honor of bringing you YouTube travelers and our resident Portugal experts, Expats Everywhere's Josh and Kalie. Each week they'll inspire, they'll educate, and they'll accompany you on your journey to Portuguese residency. This week on Let's Move to Portugal, Susan, founder of Overseas Vote Foundation, discusses the process of voting as an expat. Find out what tools are available to you for voting as an expat.
Hey expats and travelers alike, welcome back to the Expats Everywhere presents Let's Move to Portugal podcast. Kalie, how you doing?
I am doing well. We are in Cascais and it's beautiful. We're having a great vacation, so I'm doing well. What about you?
Doing well, and if you're new here to the podcast, the format is we have producer Victoria give us a little taste of what's going to happen in the episode. Then we start out with our weekly welcoming you back, talking a bit about immigration here in Portugal, if there's any news that needs to come out, if anything has broken over the past week. Then we talk a little bit about the world of expats everywhere and what we're up to here in Portugal, or just in life in general, before getting on to the main interview. So, Kalie, what's happening with immigration?
Not much. Like last week, we talked about how IMA's on strike, so that's still going on. There's still those negotiations. So not much has happened in this past week. We are towards the end of August, so there shouldn't be much going on. We'll see when September hits if anything changes, but really everything's about normal.
Well, cool. So for us, we're still traveling. Last time we checked in with you, we were in London. We were getting ready to leave, actually, and we got down here to Cascais. We've been here for about a half a week, coming up to about a week now, and we're ready to start producing content here. We did already do one interview, but we're ready to start giving our opinion on what has changed over the past 3 years in Cascais. So we look forward to getting that video ready for you. Nothing else has really happened apart from our daily shorts. We're doing Portuguese lessons, and we've been putting out those daily shorts for you. That's about it.
Yeah, I think I've said it before. That's what's really nice about our lessons, our classes. We can do them from anywhere. So we did them in London, we're doing them down here, and so we have that flexibility, which is great. So we can get that certification for our citizenship at some point.
Yeah.
But yeah, so we're doing that. We're taking a little bit of a break. We said this last week of posting on the main channel, Expats Everywhere, but we are doing content, collecting content. So we'll get back there in September. Same with Expats Everywhere Explored. We've got England coming out. That'll be a few weeks away. Let's get building. A lot of stuff just on hold right now. It's August. We're on vacation. Trying to be.
Yeah, we want to try to scale back a little bit during the month of August because we've realized if you can't beat them, join them. So we've joined all the Portuguese and taken our holiday at this time.
Yes, and Sia's off to school, so might as well, spend time with her, of course, because she doesn't have school during the day. So
yeah.
That's what we're doing.
All right, so this week's interview you did, and it's really more focused on the U.S. election?
Not really the election. So okay. I guess to give some context, we had one of you, a listener, who wrote and said that they were very passionate about people being able to vote. Mm-hmm. So it didn't matter, who you want to vote for, how you want to vote, but we wanted to get the information out to you that you can, as a U.S. citizen, still vote. Even if you don't have a home address, like you sold your house or something, you can still vote. So I hadn't really thought about putting this information out because Josh and I have been doing it for so long. Mm-hmm. We've been just voting by absentee ballot for so long that I hadn't thought that's good information for our listeners and our viewers to understand how to get set up so that you can vote by absentee ballot if you're in Portugal or just anywhere in the world. So this listener wrote and said, I think that this would be something interesting. She's a longtime listener, and I said, that's fine, as long as you can give me someone who doesn't have any political ties. We don't want to make this about who you're going to vote for, but we just want to give you the information on how to get it done. So she went to work and she found Susan, which Susan, it's great. It's a great interview. She's an expat herself, American who is in Europe, but not in Portugal. And she gives you all the information you need on how to get set up so that you can vote. And whether that's, the main elections like, federal or even down to smaller things.
Not many people in the U.S. that live abroad vote, so let's help people figure out how to do that. Let's get on to the episode.
Yep, let's talk to Susan.
All right, before we get started, let's talk about this week's sponsor, Green Ocean Advisors.
Well, I think the world right now can feel a little chaotic, but that doesn't mean that your finances have to, because I think when your finances feel chaotic, everything is just out of whack, right?
Yep, and Green Ocean Advisors will help you put together a plan to weather all those financial storms that may come your way. It's a little tricky whenever you make a move. You're often asking yourself questions like, is it time to invest in AI? What's up with that?
Ooh, AI, that's a good one. Or how about crypto? I think a lot of people talk about crypto or Bitcoin when it comes to Portugal because of the taxes. So is that for you?
Maybe closer to home is, should I sell my home before moving to Portugal, or should I rent it out?
Everyone's situation really is different, so it's good to talk to a financial advisor about your specific portfolio before you make the move, or even if you're already in Portugal.
Now, click the link in the description section below or in the show notes, depending on how you're consuming this right here. And be sure to click the one that gets you a free 15-minute consultation. It's specifically to Expats Everywhere. Thank you, John, for that. Now, on to the show.
And thanks so much for joining me on the podcast today. I have a lot of questions because you seem to be the expert in voting, but you're also an expat yourself, so I want to talk about that as well. But let's start with the voting part of things. Mm-hmm. So you, I guess, help Americans register to vote. Is that correct? Or can you tell us what you do?
Yes. Our foundation started as Overseas Vote Foundation 20 years ago, completely focused on doing one thing well. And that's helping Americans abroad register and request their absentee ballots. Now, the lucky thing about it is that's one process, one form, done simultaneously. So that was job number one. Since then, we've built a lot of tools and services around that, and we offer them on overseasvotefoundation.org and US.votefoundation.org.
Okay, we'll talk about those resources in a second, but why did you start this foundation? What was the need that you saw?
Well, at the time, I was just running a consulting business, which was all about ideas, and it was called the Dream Plan. And out of that, I guess I found my own dream plan. It was around 2000. Things were happening, and then I had a couple kids, and I watched the towers come down and kind of realized, well, I got to get involved. At least to try to bring American voices back to the U.S. I knew a lot of expats. I knew it had to be a shared issue, that, we weren't contributing our voices back through our votes. And I thought, oh, well, that program must be out there. And when I tried to use the program that was out there, it was a complete fail. I mean, it was so archaic. It was a hard copy piece of paper or a hard paper stock, postcard stock. That's why it's traditionally called federal postcard application. It was a postcard. And it was really blurry, hard to read, and a 500-page instruction book to go along with it. Now, I came out of the software business, and it ended up being an opportunity for me to apply my skills to an obvious problem that we had abroad, and I ended up creating the foundation.
Okay. And you were already an expat at that point. You were already living outside the U.S.
Oh, yeah. I moved to Paris first, lived there for about 4 years, and then came to Germany. I'm in Munich, Germany now. And I'd say altogether, I've been abroad for about 30 years.
Okay. So I think what happens is expats or people just leave the U.S. and they don't even think about this aspect of voting until maybe it's too late, or they get over whatever country they're in, and they're like, oh, I have no idea how to do this. And I think a common misconception is, I've sold my house, I have no ties to the U.S., or, I have maybe family there, but I don't have like a legal residence. Can I still vote? Can someone still vote?
Yes.
Okay.
There's no requirement to have a mailing address or any address anymore to receive anything to vote from abroad. Of course, you're not in the U.S. They're not going to send you anything there. What you need to know is where you last lived before you left, or the address of your parents before they left. And that's what's called your voting residence address. That last residence is technically where you should potentially still feel a little bit connected, even if you've been gone as long as I have, for example. And that's why your last residence address is so important. And it's not like a place you stayed temporarily. It's a place that at one point you intended to stay. And you did things that show that intent. For example, getting a driver's license or, the kinds of things you would do normally. And that intent is part of what is a voting residence address. Your last place. Now, it doesn't have anything to do with where your sister lives, where your uncle lives, where you visited. All the relatives, it's not about them. It's about you. And again, it doesn't have to be a valid current mailing address. It doesn't even have to be an address that still exists, believe it or not. A lot of the things, well, we all know. Former residences are now parking lots sometimes. But it was a residence at what time? And wherever that location was determines your voting jurisdiction, and it also determines where you will be sending your registration and ballot request form back to. That's your voting jurisdiction. So voting residence address means an address for voting purposes only.
Okay. So can you run someone through the process of how to register and, like you said, their jurisdiction? Because every state is different with how they do it, right? With how you vote. So.
Well, actually, we are in a very, very fortunate position as overseas Americans. Our program is a federally run program, meaning there's a federal law that makes the program uniform across all states. So it isn't that wildly different by state. There are some differences, yes, but I'm going to relieve you of the idea that you have to know them yourself. If you go online on USVoteFoundation.org and choose Overseas Absentee, you'll be asked the questions you need for your state. And there are, again, some slight differences, but it should be nothing that trips you up. This is information that you pretty much have. Your name, your ID can usually be just the last 4 digits of your social security number. That's the most convenient. And you don't need a valid current driver's license in the U.S. or anything like that. So again, it's going to be your personal identification information, usually something. If you don't have that, you can state that you don't, and your state might send you a voter ID. Or an ID number, a voting number, they might call it. But, it is good to put that in. Then your address where you are now or where you intend to be. For example, if you're a student, you're planning to be studying in Lisbon, you can register as soon as you know the address for the university where you're going to be. That's fine too. If you're traveling, you can put the address where you know you're going to be. But I also want to tell you, inside this law, there's some special features. One of them is that you can receive your ballot online. In most cases, you're going to have to print it. So don't worry about the address. Oh, will I be there on that specific day to receive the mail? There are plenty of parts of this program that make it much easier for you to receive your ballot in time and get it back in time. One of them is the fact that you can request it on the form. You can request it online or by post. And you will usually, if you've requested it in time, receive it as of 45 days before the election. Okay. So when you go through the process, it takes just a few minutes. You're going to put in those addresses. You're going to answer a couple other questions, like how do you want to receive your ballot? You're going to be asked if you want to put an extra note in to your election office, if there's anything special. And then in most cases, except for about 4 states, our system will allow you to apply your signature onto the form and mail it to your election office right there, right then. So 100% online process. Takes a few minutes. You can also print the form, download it, print it, and post it. And again, there are a few states like New York, California, that's what they want.
They require it, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay,
They do.
so let me ask you this because now I'm curious. So, Josh and I moved abroad in 2009, and at that point, I just had to look how to register, and I hadn't thought about sharing this information with our viewers, our listeners. But a listener actually wrote and said, "I think it's really important that people vote, whatever party, whoever you want to vote for, you still should vote, and your voice should be heard, even if you are abroad. So, can you have someone on the podcast?" And I was like, "That's a great idea. I hadn't thought about that because I've been doing it. You know, Josh and I've been doing it for so long. I say I because I'm always the one filling out the paperwork. I'm like, okay, here's your ballot, go." So I've been doing it for so long. I hadn't thought about sharing how that's done or even looking to see if there's something streamlined. So for us, I grew up in Florida, and Josh grew up on the border of Tennessee and Virginia. Really, he grew up in Virginia, but it's really close to the border. So when he and I met, he had bought a place in Tennessee. So we lived there before coming, moving abroad. So we are in Tennessee. Our driver's license,
Right.
everything would change to that. So for us, the process is I work with the county election office, which at the time it was such a small little election office. I guarantee you, we were probably the only ones doing absentee ballot out of there. That, or maybe they were military, but from his little hometown, not a lot of people went abroad. So I had a really good relationship with the lady there. So with Tennessee, what we have to do is she can email the ballot, but we have to print it out, fill it in, and mail it back. So Are they one of those states, or have you, because you do things a little differently, you've made it available to email that ballot back?
Well, here's the thing. Let's separate the registration and ballot request from the actual ballot.
Okay.
We can offer you the registration ballot request process 100% online for Tennessee. And something about what you're saying makes me want to remind people. There is a big difference between using the domestic absentee ballot form and the overseas absentee ballot form. The domestic absentee ballot form is specific to the state, and it will not give you the same protections. And when I say protections, I mean also features and benefits that the overseas form will. That's the federally mandated form that every state must accept for overseas voters, and that gives you the right to request a ballot online. Yes, most states want that ballot printed and sent back on paper. Some of them allow you to fax it, believe it or not.
Fax is still a thing?
Allow you to upload it. Some allow you to scan it and send it back, but others say only by post. And there's a reason for that. It's a security reason. There should be plenty of time to do it if you get it 45 days ahead. So if you were today to say, okay, I'm going to go and I'm going to request my ballot, literally for Tennessee, you would be done so fast because you can apply your signature and email it right through our system. So if that's a no printing, no scanning process, then you would get your ballot. If you said, I want it by email and I'm prepared to print it, you would get it 45 days ahead. So you're really in good shape. Yeah. I do want to use the opportunity to say, I understand that a lot of this is new and it might feel like jargon, and somebody who's brand new is going, this is a lot to remember. I want to put you at ease. If you land on overseasvotefoundation.org, it is pretty straightforward and simple, and the site is really designed for you to walk you through it. It's not difficult. And we have a help desk, and we can answer your questions and help you personally. And I do it myself all the time. I'm pleased to do it. So all of your listeners, we're here to help you, and we will help you personally. The other thing I want to say is we have this fabulous new tool, which is an interactive tool. The how to vote process is so often just this long, tedious list of stuff that you have to sort through. If you go to our interactive tool, it's at us.vote/how-to-vote. It's called the Voter Journey Map, and it absolutely welcomes overseas voters every step of the way. And you choose what you need to do, and it will print out in order what to do, where to go. It's fabulous. All you have to remember is us.vote. That's our outreach and campaign site. we have so many things on the other websites in terms of services that we started U.S.VOTE this year. And the voter journey map, if you just remember that, U.S.VOTE and voter journey map, you can get all your steps designed for you in order very clearly. And it's actually a really fun process. It's interactive. It's got music, and it brings the joy back to voting. That's all I can say. Yeah.
Oh, good. That's really nice to hear. Okay, so we will put all the links and resources in the description and the show notes so our listeners can have those. So, okay, so I just want to then clarify. So this makes sense because when I was talking about the ballots, like I have them email and then I have to print and mail them. That's the actual ballot. But the first step is actually just registering, which of course it's been a while since I've done that. So I'm like, okay, you have to register. So all of that can be done online through your website. And that's the thing that you're saying is quite easy. Mostly it's just all online besides a couple states. Then at that point, when you hear from for the actual ballot, that doesn't come from you. That comes from the state or the county that you're in, right?
Okay. Yeah, the U.S. is divided into 7,500 different election jurisdictions that manage these elections. So each one of your listeners might have a different election official, but they're just as responsible for you as an overseas citizen as they are domestic, and your ballot's worth just as much and your vote is worth just as much. So they are the ones who are then going to respond to your request. Again, it's one request, and it does need to be filed every year that you want to vote as an overseas voter. But again, it's not difficult. So your election official will take over at that point. They're going to send the ballot. The other thing that's really cool, though, about overseas voting now is that most states, and I would say Tennessee is definitely one of them, just so you know, have something called ballot tracking. So you can sign up for that and be notified proactively. Where's your ballot? Has it been sent? Has it been received? Things like that. These are very, cool new tools that are available in just pretty much every state.
Yeah, that's really valuable too, because obviously you're taking the time to vote. You want to make sure that your vote gets counted or gets to where it needs to be. I'm still old school with that. Like, since I know the single lady that works at the county election office, she emails me, I let her know, okay, I've mailed it off. And she's like, I'll let you know when it's here. So it's still kind of old school, but it's so nice that they've got, a bit more of the technology and streamlined, because you want to make sure that your vote doesn't get lost, right? You've done it. So you want to make sure that it gets to where it needs to go. Okay, so then you streamline the registration of everything, but then the website still have all sorts of information about voting. And I do want to also ask, or just clarify for our listener, you aren't tied to any party or anything. This is just about voting, correct? Like, this is just to let you know how to vote, not, who you want to vote for or any sort of sway or anything, but it's just giving you the information on voting, right?
That's correct. I made the decision 20 years ago when we started to just go the nonpartisan route. And you can look at our board. You'll see it's nonpartisan. It's a great mix of wonderful people. And, I kind of find it refreshing. It isn't hard to work in a nonpartisan way. We tend to say that all of our services and everything on our site is about informing or educating versus influencing. And you'll see that from top to bottom in everything we have. I think it sort of makes it easier in some ways. Of course, we'd love to motivate people by issues, but it's not necessary. There are plenty of people doing that.
Right. So true. No, I think it's refreshing, that you can show that you're a mix of different opinions and thoughts on things, and you can work together and you can just get the information out to inform people on how to do it so that they can make their own informed decision when it comes to voting.
Absolutely.
Great. Okay. So then is there anything else, because you have your interactive map and you said it's cool, it's fun. So listener, go check that out because it'll be exciting. It brings the excitement back to voting rather than it just feeling like a duty or something that you have to do. So is there anything else on the websites or anything that would be valuable for a listener about voting? Because then we'll shift over to your life as an expat. So anything final that our listeners should know about the voting process or your websites?
Just a reminder about the help desk. And that's a service that I myself started. Now we have other people on it, agents, but I still contribute. I love it because there's such a personal interaction with people. We're really here for you. I guess I want you to know that. There's no vote that's too small to care about. Every day something interesting comes my way. This morning I woke up to about 5 messages that didn't go to the help desk. It just came to me because over time, and one of them was from a voter who had a stroke and missed the last election and wants to vote again and was concerned about a signature and how to make sure that would be accepted. And there's an answer for him, you know? There's an answer for everyone. We have another really great campaign on U.S.VOTE. It's called YES. It stands for Your Eligible Situations. And there's a section just for overseas and voters abroad. It's all stories of voters and the situations they overcame. And I just want your listeners to know that your story is important to us and we'll be here for you.
That's amazing. All right. Thank you so much for that. And so that's good to know if for some reason someone misses a voting cycle, whether they forget or something happens, you can still do it again. Like you can make sure that you vote for the next one, right? And you can figure out how that works, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I'd love to see our turnout rate overseas. It's less than 8% in the best of times, even with all these great services and things online, because people kind of get out of the habit of voting. Like you said, you don't leave the U.S. knowing you carry your right to vote with you, but you do. It's in your pocket wherever you go, and regardless of the situation. If you're on a boat, you can still vote.
Yeah. Like those who do those cruises, like the world cruises, and some people live on those ships nowadays.
So your address is going to be one port, but your ballot's going to come to you online. And Okay.
See, that's what makes it quite easy, is because you can receive the ballot online. You can be anywhere, and then you just have to, if it's one of the states that you have to mail it, because some allow you to actually email the ballot back in, right?
That's true. Yeah. And that is, like you said, we have a lot of services in our state voting information on usvotefoundation.org. You can look up your state and you can look up all the different ways that you can send your voting materials back and forth and receive them. So like the registration, the ballot request, all these things. In your case, it's going to be one form, one time. And but you can see all that ahead of time if you want to get a feel for it.
Yeah, which is good. And it shouldn't really be stressful. People shouldn't get stressed out about it because you can be informed of this is what my state is, this is how I do it. And because you're able to get the ballot well before the actual election dates too, it gives you time to, research, I guess, and fill it out and then mail it back. So you do definitely have time. So it's not something to stress about, but something to know about your state, right?
Yeah. And in fact, I'm so pleased that we're having this discussion before any deadlines have fallen. Deadlines start to fall around 30 days before the election. Now, again, it depends on the state. Some states have no deadline for filing your form from abroad, but don't count on that. Anyway, it's great we're doing this early. In past years, press and people like that only wanted to talk to us when it was already too late. Now people are getting a little bit more awareness. I think the vote from abroad could be a very large factor if we all really took advantage of it. Hopefully this year will be different and it will be a landmark.
Earlier, were you saying that less than 8% of actual voting is from abroad? Like on the good
What I
good
meant
years,
is
or
that less than 8% of eligible overseas citizens are using their right to vote from abroad. They're not.
wow,
The tragedy is all this exists and people just
just
aren't
don't do
using
it.
it. They're not doing
Yeah.
it. Now, there are reasons too, there are valid concerns. We do address those on Overseas Vote Foundation. There's a page of myths versus facts. Some of those fears and concerns are about taxes, for example. People think, oh gosh, if I vote, the tax man will be after me.
It's funny.
Don't make that assumption. Get the facts. We have the facts there. You should just, if you're indefinitely abroad and you're not going back and you don't have a U.S. address anymore and you're not paying state taxes, just vote at the federal level. And,
There you go. There
that's
are
president,
options.
vice president, U.S. House, and Senate. And to be honest, I'm pretty happy with that. I'm not really up to voting for my local mayor in a town I haven't lived in 30 years.
Yeah, that's how I feel.
Yeah.
Or like the the head of the school board or something like really local. That's obviously a little harder, and you can inform yourself, but you're not there, and it's not. Some of those things aren't actually directly affecting you anyway, because all right, I have a daughter, but we're here, so she's not going to school. Where our address is. So some of those things, it's like, okay, I won't vote for those, or I'll leave it blank or whatever. But of course, at the federal level, I mean, we do know that stuff affects you just as a U.S. citizen, right?
Absolutely.
So
and we, considering as we're abroad, we know more and more about how U.S. foreign policy affects us across the world. And just by osmosis, we start to care about it more because, we're asked about it by our neighbors and we're looked at to understand it. And we're expected to be able to answer those questions, aren't we? So we're just kind of walking diplomats. Everything we do and say is going to reflect our country when we're in a foreign country or a host country. So we want a say in that, and we have a say in that. Our vote, we can cast it. So, that's, one of my driving concerns, and I think one that's shared by many of my colleagues that are here.
Great. Well, thank you so much for what you do. And you can obviously see and feel the passion in it, which is good. And I think it might be hard for some people to feel passion in voting, but it is a good thing to be involved in, right?
Yeah. And I think when they find out that it is pretty much set up for them now and they're going to be welcomed, it's going to be fun. Why not?
Yeah, definitely. Okay, well, I'm sure the voting will come up again in the rest of the conversation, but let's also shift and talk about you being an expat. So you've been abroad for quite a while. Why did you move? Who did you move with? And I guess a lot has changed since you first moved. So why don't you tell us a little bit about your story?
Well, I was living in California, in Santa Cruz, working for a software company called SEO. And I had been there for a while and I was still pretty young, and I thought, is this it? Here I am sitting on the beach looking at this beautiful surf. Oh, it's so nice. And the weather's great. And it's like this every day. And I can count on it. But I don't think I'm done. I grew up in Ann Arbor, Michigan. I had gotten on a plane with 2 suitcases and a bike when I was 17, moved to California, and then went through university at University of California, went through getting a job in the software industry, and I really worked my way up. I didn't go straight into it. I had to work my way through those jobs. Even the Broken Egg Omelet House was a good step for me at one point, but I did it bit by bit and ended up being able to take a transfer with the company I was working with at the time, and became director of marketing for France and Spain.
Okay.
And transferred because it was just a time in my life where I said, am I going to really settle down and just stay here, or am I going to go further? I decided to take the leap. I told myself, hey, if it doesn't work out, I'll come back.
Yes, of course. Yeah. That's something that I think people forget. Like, you can do it. And if you don't like it, you can either move to a different place or you can go back to the US or back to your home country, wherever that might be. So just because you move doesn't mean that's it. That's
It's
the
not
decision.
forever. It doesn't have to be forever. You always have the choice to return back to the US as a US citizen. I put my things in storage, and 4 years later, I went back and gave everything away except
That's such a common thing. That's what happened with me and Josh as well.
I kept my cast iron frying pan, and I shipped my Schwinn bike over. I don't know why I would do such a thing, but I did.
Yeah.
Yep.
That's funny. Yeah, it's quite similar for us. We put stuff in storage because we left and we were still dating. And then we went back, we got married. And although we told people, hey, we're going to move back abroad, people love to give actual gifts at weddings, right? So especially back then, I think nowadays it's a bit more to do these like, money or experiences. So we had all the stuff. And so we're like, well, what are we going to do with this? So we had it all in storage, and all these beautiful new appliances just sat there. We didn't use them. And then the year after we came back, we're like, let's just have a garage sale. Because like we have all this stuff, and we decided there's more out there. We're not going to come back to it.
And the other thing is, you kind of maybe want to get what's on offer in Europe, which is different. It's different,
Yes.
Beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
You can get things you really, maybe you don't want to do Macy's anymore. And you're into, antiques or something. Yep.
It's true. Yeah, you can find something else. Or if you want to do something similar to Macy's, they have that as well, right? So it's like you can find it too.
Everything.
Great. Okay, so you transferred with your company to Paris, you said, right?
Yeah.
And then how long were you in Paris for?
About 4.5 years. It was, let me just say, in the beginning, it's hard, especially, suddenly I'm having to do marketing in French, which I had a little background in French, so it was okay. That's actually why I got the job. I wouldn't have gotten it if I didn't speak at all. And I do believe we can all learn a foreign language. You just have to want to. Mm-hmm. And throw yourself in the bathtub, as the French say. And it's not just the language. It's also the customs, right? I mean, for me, as a marketing person in California, you pick up the phone, I want to buy some ads. In France, it was like, oh, you want to buy an ad? Well, we'll have to come in and meet with you. And I'm like, why do you have to meet with me? Because that's how it's done. They don't do a deal over the phone. Or at that time, they didn't. Anyway, So it was a great learning experience. And on one of my trips to Munich, this guy walked into the room with his boss. And I thought, Turned out he was French, living in Munich. And I had to, in the long run, he couldn't move with his job, but I could. So I ended up leaving Paris to go to Munich to marry a Frenchman, of all ironies.
That's
and
funny.
Had 2 kids here and stayed. And I'm not sad about it. The quality of life here is great. I love France. I was just there, went to a couple of Olympic events. Both daughters are now living there, one in Paris and one in Marseille. Okay. But I stuck in Munich quite well. Mm-hmm.
All right. Oh, good. Well, I want to talk about, you said it was hard. You moved and it was hard. And I think that sometimes people maybe romanticize, well, you moved to Paris. I think a lot of people romanticize moving to Paris, but even just moving abroad, wherever it might be. We have a lot of listeners who are in Portugal or moving to Portugal because we're here and that's what the podcast is mainly about. But anywhere you move, sometimes you romanticize how amazing it's going to be, but it's a bit of a false sense of security because it can be tough when you first move, right?
Yes. And moving and living somewhere, it's not the same as vacation. I think the mistake that some people might make is to think, oh, I loved it when I visited, and it's going to be a forever vacation. No. Yeah. And guess what? People in your host country have been slogging it out to move up as well and to find a great place to live and a great job. And, they're going to be, I think in Portugal, people are quite friendly to expats. But in Paris, you want to get along in Paris, you got to fit in. I mean, just make it a goal to learn French and speak it, or at least try and show. And rather than put your host country people into the position that they should somehow figure out how to communicate with you. So that's the first thing, just showing that you're trying and really to try. So the language is very important. And through the language, we get to know the culture. I mean, how will you ever tell a joke if you don't understand the language and over time, the idioms and the behind the scenes meanings of things and the false friends in the language. In French, for example, there's a phrase called pas terrible, not terrible. Well, it doesn't mean not terrible. It means great. How would you ever know
that's confusing.
Yeah, that's called a false friend, for example. Yeah, they're in every language, but maybe more of them in French. I don't know.
They're in Portuguese.
Okay. No, it is. It's and Portuguese is not simple. But trying matters. I think your intent and coming over with a realistic attitude that it takes really years to feel at home in any new place. It doesn't matter if it's going to be 50 miles from where you live now or in another country. There's still a different set of challenges, and living there is different. Yeah, it does take a while, and there are going to be ups and downs, but the good news is you can step out your door and look at how beautiful it is and the architecture and be inspired. And that's the kind of thing that kept me going. You know, the beautiful
remembering why you moved, right? Remembering that.
Absolutely. The sum total quality of life and the safety. I mean, I was talking to someone yesterday who's down in Miami, and trying to talk about, what's some of the issues that are on the table. And I said, well, how about the issue of freedom? What's freedom? Freedom for me as a woman is that here I can go out my door any time of day or night, and I never have to be afraid to walk. I don't have to be afraid about being raped. I don't have to be afraid about being shot. I don't have to be afraid about getting hit by a car and not being able to pay for the health care. All of those things combine, plus more. I don't have to be afraid of kids going to school and being in danger. There's so much about the quality of life that is basic structure of the social system and the social compact abroad, across Europe, that I think we really benefit from.
Right, those freedoms that you get, and maybe those types of freedoms are different for different people, right? So like someone figuring out what your freedom is and how do you achieve that freedom, and where would that freedom be, right? Because it could be, it could be different places in the U.S. or it could be abroad, because it will change for everyone, right? But being able to live in a way that you feel free is something that's really important, right?
Yes, and I think that some men don't understand that for a woman, freedom even includes simply walking down the street. Yeah.
Yep, definitely. And earlier you said something that I thought was really amazing. No matter where you move to, when you learn the language, you start to learn the culture as well. And so no matter what country you go to and what language you're learning, it's really important to learn the language, because like you said, if you can't tell a joke in that language, or maybe even understand, start off by understanding a joke, but you once you can do that, then you feel a little more connected to the culture, right? So that's really good advice.
There's some definite milestones. Being able to laugh at the jokes and understand, and being able to argue.
Oh, argue, that's a good one too. Did you have to
go back into English when I got angry? Not anymore.
Okay.
That was a real milestone.
So how long did it take you then, since you said you knew a little bit of French when you moved, and then you obviously met a Frenchman, but you moved to Germany, but were you so you started off speaking English with him, or were you speaking French with him?
When I went to France, I didn't assume I would speak any English. I really became completely bilingual, and felt really a lot of the special things about, or a certain special thing about a language when you really get to know it well, is you even realize sometimes speaking it that you feel different. A language has emotion in it. The way it's structured makes you feel different. The organization of the noun and verb and such in German is very different from the way it is in French. And yeah, so those kinds of things affect your mood even. But yeah, I really launched straight into French and embraced it, and I had a harder time when I came to Germany. I didn't know. First of all, I had a basis in German as a child. My mother is German, and I studied. We didn't really speak it at home, but I heard it, and I did spend quite a bit of time in high school studying it, and had traveled to Germany, so it was there. But it was amazing how, after having been really immersed in French, how difficult it was for me to switch to German then. And it took me a little bit longer. I didn't want to let go of French the way I wanted to learn it when I got there. Anyway, over time, though, now it's kind of equal. If I just hear one word in a language, I can switch to it. I can think in the language.
You can argue in both? You can argue in both?
I can. And I'll just say to your listeners, over time, you can do it. Don't think you can't learn a language. I think part of it is we think we can't. But when you're in the country, you can't. It's very hard when you're outside of the country and trying to do it through some sort of program or in a class. When you're really living it and you have the opportunity to live it, turn on the radio, watch the television, just have it going. And pretty soon you'll realize, oh, I actually understood that. It's not just background noise. That's a good sign.
But that's important to get yourself into it, right? Because it's quite easy to turn on the TV, especially here, and stuff's in English, so you can watch that or listen to music in English. But so many people here also speak English, so it's easy to not get yourself around the language, which slows down learning the language. But if you put the news on and have that stuff in the background, and you're just taking it in, it'll just help you learn a lot faster.
Yeah, it really does take that specific effort to say, oh, gosh, it's so tempting to listen to a podcast in English and, the Happiness Lab or something to get me over this bad day. But put on the news and listen to what are they saying about what's happening in the country you're in, and then go do the Happiness Lab.
Yeah, that's true, right? Because you'll need something happy afterwards.
Mix it up. At least you'll know. And then when it grows. It builds up over time. It's perfectly within your reach.
And there are comedians in all different languages. So if you want something funny, try listening to a comedian in that language, right?
That's right. I mean, if I just turn it on in German, even if I don't understand, they're so goofy looking that I laugh.
Right. Yeah, and other people are laughing, so you're like, okay. Yeah. Amazing, Susan. Well, thank you so much for chatting with me today on the podcast about how U.S. citizens can vote, where to go, and we'll give all the links so that we can send our listeners to your resources, because it sounds like you have a lot and really everything that they need to be informed. And then, of course, if they need help, they can reach out to you. And then also thank you for chatting with us about a lot about languages, the importance of that in your expat life as well.
It's been a super pleasure. And thank you so much for helping get out the vote from abroad.